And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here came this almost like pressure. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, is the Lord calling me to preach? But I don't preach. I'm not a preacher. That's not my role. That's not what I do. And it was just kind of a weird season. Well, when God called me to evangelize, because that's what I was feeling like I should go evangelize. But I was like, man, I don't even preach. Like, what am I going to do? You know, I can go sing and I'm fine with that. And so it was like a random Sunday. Me and Amanda had been praying. I've been fasting. And a prophet, Johnny Garrison, was at our church. And during the middle of his message, he just came over to me. Before he came over to me, I heard someone say, "Go." And it was very audible. It was so audible. I turned around to see who it was. There was no one there. I thought, that was weird. He stopped preaching, walked over to me, said, "I heard what God said. God told you to go. And when God said it, I heard it." It was a pretty powerful moment for me. It changed my life. I've never been the same since that moment. No matter whatever happens in my life, I will always have that moment and the reality of what happened. And I think that there's a power in remembering the moments. When you remember the moments and you're in the middle of some junk in life, or you're questioning your calling, or you're questioning your gifting, or you're questioning what God has for you to do, remembering those moments and being like, you know what, that really happened. And I went through a season about 6 years or so, maybe about 5 years, where I was really confused because my father was like, well, we'll pray about it. We'll see. He was very wise. I didn't see that then. I see it now. But he told me no. He told me no for years and years and years, a consistent no. And so I had those moments where I would question, like, did that really happen? Was that God? Was that me? Did I eat something bad? And I would even ask my wife, I say, hey, you remember that Sunday this happened? Yeah. And so I was in a place where everything else in my life was bitter to me. It was almost as if I couldn't do that, it was like there was nothing else for me. I was working a job. I was in the military. I was, a weekend warrior in the National Guard. And I loved the military and I loved what I did. I had really no clue that I would ever go overseas. But, and we'll talk a little bit about the military side of things. But really, as I began my evangelistic career after all of that, several years into my evangelistic career, I prayed. And here's what I prayed. I prayed, God, whenever this changes for me, because I think one of the worst things that any of us can do in ministry is like, beat a dead horse and just continue to do something that's over with. We preach about seasons, but we are terrified of seasons. We sing about seasons, but we're terrified of seasons because a season means that something has to end for something to begin. And I didn't want that. And I said, Lord, whenever this season changes for me, here's what I would like. I would like you to put on me what you put on me that Sunday. Because I remember, like, everything else was just like bitter to me. Nothing else tasted good. It was like, if I can't do that, I can't do nothing. It's all I talked about. It's all I dreamed about. It's all I prayed about. And then one morning I woke up to go evangelize and it was almost gone. And I struggled with that for like a week or two. I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go get on a plane. I don't want to leave my family. Like, what is happening? I would go to churches. I would fall in love with the people. I would just be like, man, this is a great church, man. You got something really good here. Like, this is amazing. And I would see myself standing in that pulpit as the pastor, pastoring those people. And I was like, God, what is this? And then the Lord reminded me, you told me, if you ever changed, if my calling for you shifted, then this is what you would feel. And I literally said, well, Lord, you got to talk to Amanda because, she's never lived away from home. We live on nice land with her family. I got a pond in my front yard. Like, life is good. And my evangelistic career is on the way up. It's not on the way down. I'm not trying to find my way.
So in
Everything's
other words,
great.
you weren't struggling and working multiple jobs trying to make ends meet. This was something that was actually you didn't want to pursue, but you felt God leading you that direction. This was not just looking like it was some mountaintop experience that you were chasing.
Exactly. I questioned myself a million times. Not only me, but other people questioned me. Good friends of mine were like, "What are you doing? You can basically write your own ticket. Everybody wants a piece of you. Why are you going to start a church?"
Yeah,
And
you
then
sing
behind the
phenomenally.
scenes,
You can preach.
yeah,
You can do all of those things.
all of those things. And behind the scenes, what a lot of people don't know is I had been offered a couple churches in my season of evangelizing. Basically, carte blanche, all you got to do is come. And I never felt that. I never felt that at all. The only time that I ever felt good about something, I called my father and I said, "Dad, this opportunity's been presented to me. I want to give you the parameters of the opportunity, and I want you to tell me what you think." And he said, "Where is it?" And I told him where it was. And he said, "Absolutely not." And I said, "Well, you haven't heard?" He said, "No." The answer is no. And you got to remember,
Wow.
I lived for a little while outside of the umbrella of having a true pastor. And I will never do that again. And so I said, "Yes, sir. Absolutely. 100%. And my dad always told me no. And I hated that about my dad. But in this level, in my development in ministry, what I begin to understand is, you know what? It doesn't matter how many times he says no. I'm going to say yes, sir, every time. Yes, sir. And I was a little frustrated about that situation, but 22, 23 years removed, looking back on that, what a word of wisdom. My life probably would not be what it is today if I would have done that, because it looked good on the outside, but he just didn't feel it in the spirit. He said no. And it was the right answer. It was the right answer. And moments like that. So when I talked to Amanda about what I felt, matter of fact, I didn't even talk to her. I had said, "God, you will have to speak to Amanda." And I remember it like it was yesterday. We're driving on the road and she says to me out of the blue, "Do you think we'll live here forever?" Those were her words. And I said, "What do you mean? Do we live here forever?" And was like, "We might move one day, buy some land, whatever." She said, "No, I'm not talking about here where we live. I mean, do you think we'll live in North Carolina forever?" And I said, "Why? Why do you ask that question?" And then she started crying a little bit. And she said, "I feel like God wants us to start a church." And then I started crying. I'm getting choked up now thinking about it. Then I started crying. And I'm like, "Babe, you're not going to believe what God's been talking to me about." And then she really started crying. And she said, "Oh, no, it's true. This is true. And I feel it's true." I think she was hoping that I would say, "Well, that's crazy. We're not going to do that." But I did feel it. So we started talking privately, me and her, praying. We talked about different locations, what we could do. We both really loved Charleston, South Carolina. And we talked about that. We both love San Antonio, Texas, Riverwalk area. We're like, man, a church inside the city limits of San Antonio, that would be amazing. And we both loved Atlanta. And that was kind of, where we ended up. There's a whole bunch of stories behind why we ended up in Atlanta. But when I went to my father, matter of fact, I was so nervous about meeting my father that I told my wife not to come with me. I said, "I'm going to go talk to Dad about what I feel." And I was like, "I'm going to go alone." I just didn't want the embarrassment, or, my dad is he's a no nonsense guy, and I love him for that. But sometimes, I want a conversation. I want some dialogue. I mean, the man's just a no, yes type guy. And so I went to my mother and father's house. I called a meeting with them. I sat down in their kitchen. We talked for a little while, some sundries. And I said, "Hey, listen, I called this meeting because I have something really important I need to tell you guys." And I said, "I'm just going to come out and say it. Me and Amanda feel like God wants us to go start a church. And literally the first words out of my father's mouth was, yes. He said, yes. He said,
Wow.
this is what I've been waiting for. He said, you and Amanda are going to start a great church. And he just began to pour out his spirit. And I wanted to know where my father was. Who is this man? Who had abducted my father, replaced him with this person. And my mom's sitting there, she's just crying, and I'm just having this moment where I'm like, you never appreciate the value of a yes until you've been told no a lot. And that yes, man, it just has so much power. Like I knew sitting in my mother and father's kitchen that day that this church would be a revival church. 100%. I had no doubt in my mind. And that moment was just as powerful for me as the moment on that Sunday morning standing on the front row with Johnny Garrison. Those two moments signify my life in the ministry that God has given me. Because I had a go from God and I had a yes from my pastor, and no devil in hell can ever change that, no matter what.
Wow.
And Ryan, I have been through hell in the last 12 years. Hell. I have put my family through, myself through literal hell to be where we are at today. And every moment of hell, I had a go from God and a yes from my pastor, and I was fine.